everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I'm Sandro, an expert, or let's say someone who's curious about behaviour in business and the impact that the levers business leaders can pull to drive performance and culture. This is the week that was, your go-to series for fresh perspectives on how culture shapes the success of organisations. You may wonder why I'm wearing this Formula One Las Vegas cap. Well, first of all, Las Vegas, well, I can't tell you yet, but there's some very exciting news that I will be able to announce in the not too distant future. And Formula One, well, this was the week that Lando Norris won the World Drivers' Championship in Formula One. I should be wearing a Ferrari cap, but my red-blooded Italian nature can't bring me to do that given Ferrari's disappointing season. So this is the next best thing. So today, I'd like to look at how McLaren didn't just win a world championship. They led, they recognised the fleeting moment of opportunity, and they built a behavioural control system that made winning feel almost inevitable. So let's start with leadership, because that's where this transformation truly began. McLaren's turnaround rests heavily on two individuals, Zak Brown and Andrea Stella, two leaders with very different personalities, but two leaders who are perfectly aligned in terms of philosophy. They face the classic two alphas problem with their drivers. When both drivers are competing for a title, most teams implode. We've seen it before. Hamilton versus Rosberg, Vettel versus Leclerc. Situations where internal rivalry becomes a cultural toxin. McLaren solved that problem with extraordinary simplicity. They created what became known as the papaya rules. Race freely unless you put the team at risk. This rule gave both drivers clarity. It diffused suspicion, it prevented emotional escalation, and it created psychological safety on both sides of the garage. Their leadership style was also defined by emotional discipline. In high-pressure moments late in the season, Andrea Stella never raised his voice, never panicked, and never sent emotionally charged messages over the radio. He communicated in calm, factual, almost clinical sentences, and that tone cascaded downward. When leaders stay composed, teams stay composed. And the leadership message was reinforced by the drivers themselves. When Norris became world champion and said, "This is not my title, this is ours," that just wasn't PR spin, that was cultural alignment. McLaren's leaders built the values and their drivers amplified them. Once leadership was in place, the next step was managing opportunity, not risk, opportunity. Recognising not just where the team was, but where the team could be if the right behavioural conditions were protected. McLaren understood they had entered a 2 to 3 year window where car performance, team cohesion and driver maturity were aligned. These windows do not last forever, and they manage the opportunity with remarkable emotional intelligence. Take the moment when Piastri, the focus of the Australian press, accused McLaren of favouring Norris. A weaker team would have spiralled into defensiveness or internal paranoia. Instead, Stella calmly released data showing equal treatment, equal upgrade parity, and equal strategy access. He shut down a destabilising narrative before it could infect the garage. Or look at their development philosophy. While other teams bolted on upgrades to their cars in panic mode, McLaren stuck to a measured evolution curve. No vanity projects, no rush fixes. They protected reliability and allowed their drivers to perform consistently. And crucially, they turned the Norris-Piastri rivalry into an asset. Because the environment felt fair and felt transparent, the rivalry raised standards rather than fracturing relationships. That's opportunity management at its best, recognizing the moment and safeguarding the conditions that allow you to exploit it. With leadership and opportunity in place, the final part of the puzzle is what I want to focus on most: the behavioural control system that made McLaren's performance repeatable. And it begins with hiring. McLaren don't simply hire people, they integrate them into a behavioural operating model. Let me give you a real example that insiders love to talk about: the first 48 hours when a new engineer joins the team. On day one, the engineer doesn't touch data, CAD models, or simulation tools. Instead, they sit in a room and watch a race debrief from a previous season, a session where McLaren openly discuss a mistake they made. Who doesn't make mistakes? After watching, the newcomer is asked 3 questions. What did you notice about the communication? Where was the blame? And what emotion did you detect? And the answers are always the same. No blame, no defensiveness, no drama, only calm, factual discussion. On day 2, they attend a session called How We Work Under Pressure. They are taught escalation rules, communication expectations, how to deliver and receive feedback, and how to behave during moments of intense stress. And then, and this is important, they sign a behavioural agreement, a contract that formalises the behavioural expectations of being part of McLaren. This onboarding process is a preventative control. It filters out the wrong behaviours and it reinforces the cultural norms from day one. Next comes tone setting, the directional control. Papaya rules weren't just words, they were behavioural boundaries. Piastri publicly defending the fairness of the system wasn't luck, it was evidence that tone setting had been fully internalised. Then we move to training, the corrective control. McLaren trained behaviours, not just skills. Strategists rehearse pressure scenarios. Pit crews rotate roles to build resilience. Drivers work on emotional regulation and recovery after mistakes. And in debriefs, the rule is simple. Facts first, no blame, escalate early. That's how you reduce behavioural variability under pressure. Then there are incentives, the reinforcing control. When Norris chose to run the number 1 plate next year, an announcement he made 24 hours ago, for the mechanics and engineers, he was reinforcing humility and collective identity. And when drivers know that ego-driven behaviour carries a cultural penalty, not just a competitive one, it naturally keeps the environment healthy. And finally, performance management, the monitoring control. McLaren measure the behaviours that produce performance. They track escalation speed. They track cross-team collaboration. They track emotional control. And they track communication clarity. They don't just measure lap time. They measure how lap time is created. When you pull all of this together, leadership, opportunity management, and a suite of behavioural controls, you get predictable excellence. You get a world championship, not as a surprise, but as the logical output of a system designed to produce it. And that is the lesson. McLaren, and congratulations to them, they didn't just build a fast car, they built a control system, a behavioural governance model that made high performance inevitable. And that's why they won. That's it for this week's episode of The Week That Was. If you found this useful, don't forget to visit the YouTube channel, to like, to subscribe, and to share your thoughts. And as always, remember, culture isn't what you say. It's what you do when no one's watching. Thanks for watching. See you next time. And hopefully Ferrari will be watching this video.